ضيوفنا الكرام، رحبوا معنا بفاميلوزي باباجيدا، المدير التنفيذي لأندر 40 CEO بأفريقيا ومتحدثي هذه الجلسة.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Familusi Babajide, Executive Director, Africa at Under 40 CEOs, and his panel.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this critical session discussing global future skills as it relates to novel thinking, initiative, and self-direction. It is indeed an honor to be in the presence of such greatness and in a room filled with carefully handpicked young leaders, creators, and global innovators as we seek to explore, experience, and experiment with ways to meet the challenge of change our world faces today. My name is Familusi Babajide, but you may call me Fab. I'm a global citizen from Africa and from the nation of Nigeria. And for those of you who may not know where Nigeria is situated, I believe you're very familiar with our neighbors at Wakanda. All right, a very warm applause as we please make welcome our distinguished panelists on stage. All right, I'd like to warmly welcome all our distinguished panelists. Thank you for being here today. Would like for the House to please be a little bit more settled so we can get into this conversation. Thank you very much. All right, just to give a little backdrop to what we'll be talking about today, I would like to talk with this gentleman over here. His name is Othman and is from Misk. Why research future skills in the first place?
First of all, thank you for asking this question.
Right.
At Misk Foundation, we've done kind of our, let's say, back desk research on what are the topics that are really interesting for youth. What we found out, essentially, is that most organizations, most reports that we read, they tend to talk about youth and not necessarily to youth, about topics that are interesting for the people who wrote those reports and not necessarily interesting for youth. So at Misk Foundation, we decided, okay, the first thing we need to do is first understand what young people are thinking about, and we did that. So we had done a very large survey, approximately 25,000 people across 25 countries, and what we found is that actually education and skills are quite an important topic. In fact, about 82% of youth believe that education is a lifelong learning process, and they face a lot of challenges in terms of access to that education.
All right, so quickly, based on your research at Misk, what would you say are those critical skills needed to succeed in tomorrow's economy?
Sure, so we've also done a research on future skills.
Okay.
And this research, we looked at the lead learners in 6 cities. What we found out is that among the trends that within these 6 cities that they've exhibited, youth are very, very proactive. These learners are very, very proactive. And they tend to look at things as not let other people or the government or the private sector build for me, but what can I build now? And then push to that in a further timeline. So they don't think in 1 to 2 years. No, they think in 5 to 10. And while I agree it's really hard to think within that timeline, it's very easy to at least plan within the first 2 years and then maybe have goals that you can put in for the 5 to 10 year timeline. Another skill that was very interesting that we found was that they had very, very clear priorities. So I know what I am, I know what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Amazing. Now, Tsumugi, you were a participant at the Misk Summer Fellowship at the Johns Hopkins University, where you said you met a number of vibrant young Middle Easterns, and you said, your words, that you were greatly stimulated by how passionate they are about shaping tomorrow's world. Firstly, do you agree with Othman's findings? And secondly, do you reckon that passion could be a learned skill relevant in tomorrow's economy?
Well, first of all, I would like to express sincere gratitude to Misk Foundation for having me here. And it is my pleasure to be in Riyadh for the second time. And the answer to the question is absolutely yes. The passion can be a skill that we learn to survive this world. And so today, we face infinite possibilities as we live. And it is, on one side, it is a good thing, but it is also true that we can get easily lost and can't find out where we're heading to. And I think the skill to survive this kind of world is to take some time to think about who you are and what you want to do and what are the procedures you have to go through to achieve that goal. And to achieve, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm kind of nervous. This is my first time to be in this kind of, to talk in front of this kind of big audience. And so
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And it is true that by knowing what we can be passionate about, analyzing what we love, I think it will give you a map to navigate through this flood of possibilities we face.
All right, amazing. I'd like to come to you, Abdulaziz. For about 7 years, of close to 25 years at SABIC, you've been basically all about human resource. Now, firstly, I would like to ask you how the skills of the future differ from the skills of the past, and secondly, how your corporate philosophy pertaining to talent acquisition at SABIC has evolved over the years.
So maybe I'm going to start by answering probably or talking about the second part, focusing on the philosophy that we have at SABIC. Coming back from very recent history of kicking off the transformation that we had in SABIC in 2015, we came to the realization that what we classically would call in the past recruitment is something that is no longer viable. Reflecting on our youth today and what their aspirations to do or what they want to achieve at the workplace is completely different. The focus in the past used to be, or the view on this activity was a pure process view. So we're going to execute a process in certain steps, and the measurement of success usually of this process is either efficiency or cost or time or whatever it is. Now, making the shift from a process-driven focus to a value capture point of view, we need to make that mindset change from recruitment to talent acquisition, because the value we're seeking is getting the right talent that is able to grow in the company, first, and second, achieve and feel self-fulfillment, which is a basic need that all of us have. Now, our youth are different from where we came from as a generation in terms of aspirations and even how they do things today. It's completely different. They want to be part of organizations, and maybe I'm talking about it from a corporate point of view or a large-scale company point of view. They would like to be part of an organization that would allow them to grow and create impact. In terms of explaining what is required, my generation is, in the past, we used to be requested or required to do something. And the best we could do is, instead of asking, why is this required to be done? Our response is usually, okay, we're going to do it. When do you need to have it ready? And what's the timeline? What's the budget? It's the normal process or tick-in-the-box approach. The new generation, when you ask them to do something, and I've seen this a lot, the first response is, you need to explain to me, why do you want to achieve this thing? Because it needs to be in line with their values, with their beliefs, and they want to be able to achieve and create impact and change in the organization. And to be honest, reflecting on the discussions I've heard in the previous panel, I think it's very inspiring, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done from kind of the preparation point of view of this workforce. But we do have a responsibility as corporate executives that we need to reflect internally and make sure that we are creating an environment that is conducive for this new generation actually to flourish. We could not ask them to innovate while we are very authoritative in what we're doing and not investing enough time in explaining what the corporate strategies are and the long-term visions are and connecting the dots of how they could be part of achieving this strategy. They do not want to be working in silos where they just tick in the box and they come to the office from 7 to 4 and they just leave. They want to be part of something big. They want to create impact. And I think that we do have a responsibility as corporate executives in creating an environment, an enabling environment like that.
That's actually amazing. That's very amazing. Roland, I must say that I'm quite envious of all of your roles at Siemens. Chief Operating Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Sustainability Officer, and the head of corporate development. So we're going to have a conversation, me and you, after this session. But tell me, what are those skill sets? What are those, do you look out for unusual combination of skills when hiring for your corporate innovation incubator Next 47? And what exactly are you typically on the lookout for?
Well, I think I answered this question more in the context of what we general hiring, not in the context of Next 47. Just for the audience to explain, Next 47 is our venture capital arm. We call it Next 47 because Siemens was founded in 1847, so we look for the next 170 years or so. But let me answer that question in the broader context. So what we are definitely looking for are skills which are more and more demanded from the new technologies, and in particular digital technologies, which are rolling into many, many markets, actually all markets which we are serving. This is first and foremost strong cognitive skills. So learning, problem solving, these are elements which are required more and more. It's typical for the human brain. It's very hard for a computer to really match. Second one is technology skills. I would add also any kind of mathematics, AI, deep learning skills. And the third one is what we call soft skills, social, emotional skills, which I do believe are important already, and they're getting more and more important, in particular in the context of having a demand for collaborative work in a diverse environment, different cultures, and different educations, and that makes it. I add one more, in particular for the young people here. I do believe the skills of having persistence and discipline I would add on top, because without that, you will not reach the next level if you have not a high ambition.
All right. So would you agree with Abdulaziz's assertion that, you know, the young people are more about the why than the what?
The question is
Roland, actually. Yes.
Sorry.
So Abdulaziz said to us earlier that the young people want to know why they're carrying out a task, not necessarily the task itself.
We get that more and more. It is about the purpose of a company, the purpose of their own work, which people are doing. Yeah. This is getting more and more important also for the people they hired, which we are hiring, but also if we want the people to stay.
All right.
You know the saying. People are hiring to a company, but they're leaving the boss. So also the boss have to contribute in explaining to the people what's the purpose of their work. And it could be different in terms of, is it either making a contribution to the economy or the ecology? So global warming is a topic which is very, very much in the heart of our people. But it's also about supporting societies, giving back to societies in order to make them prosper and grow at the same time. So this is a trend, and we see that increasing more and more, in particular for the young people.
All right, I'll come to you, Dino. Your family has been involved in providing quality education for about 60 years. For 14 of those years, you've worked at GEMS, and I would say you're the educator, or should I call you the educationist? How would you advise young people to go about acquiring these much-needed skills?
So I think you need to break it down into a couple of buckets. One, I think young people need to ask their schools, their education system, their ministries, to push the boundaries of their learning. If you think about, and I'll point you to something like the World Economic Forum's New Vision for Education, they came up with a set of skills for the 21st century. They talked about foundational literacies. Foundational literacies is how young people are able to take core skills and apply it to everyday problems. And this is things like literacy, numeracy, scientific literacy, computational literacy, financial literacy, civic and cultural literacy. These are the foundations that young people still need. And it's the obligation of the education systems of any nation to make sure that they have those foundations. But then there's another bucket, which is what you would consider competencies relevant for the 21st century. Now, this is how young people apply their skills to complex challenges. So when we talk about competencies, what's important? And it's been mentioned, not just in this session, but it's been mentioned in the previous session. It is about critical thinking. It is about communication. It is about collaboration. It is about that ability to be able to create, creativity. These are core competencies that are going to be an absolute non-negotiable for the world that we're about to enter. And then at the end of the day, which is what I actually think is most important, there's character, there's values. I think one of the things that's very important for all of us to understand is that the rate of change is so exponential that sometimes the skills that we seek to acquire may become out of date before you know it, before you can blink. But then what helps you navigate this very complex and complicated world? It is your character. It is your values. So when I think about advice that I provide our school principals, our schools, when we talk to ministers of education, what do we try and advise them to do? Yes, you need to focus on the fundamentals. Yes, you need to focus on the competencies, but assume they're going to change really quickly. But what you're really trying to do is we're trying to give our young people, our youth, a framework to make the right choices. The ability to be able to derive insight from a complex and at times unrelated set of inputs so that they can deliver impact. Impact not just for themselves or their families or their communities or even their countries, but for the world at large. And that is what you try and do. So for me, that is the obligation that every education system must strive for. Within all of this, you need to make sure, and I think it was mentioned earlier on, if there is no love of learning, so if I'm speaking to the youth that are sitting here, if nothing else, assume that you will never know enough. You will never know enough. So if there's nothing else, secure, acquire the love of learning. That's what will hold you in good stead. And then finally, if I'm not talking about education systems, I'm going to talk to our industry partners. What can industry do? Today, if we think about education, it is notoriously slow to move. It is notoriously slow to be disrupted. And that's actually unacceptable for the world that we're heading into. Where do I see the most advanced rate of change? It is in industry. Industry is at the cutting edge of change. So I think there is an obligation for industry to partner at a much earlier level with schools. You traditionally hear of industry partnering with universities. That's too late. Industry needs to start engaging with young people when they're 10, when they're 12. Forget it, when they're 3. That's the obligation. So if I was youth today, those are my asks. One from industry and one from the education systems of their country.
All right, thank you very much, Dino. Fahad, you originally trained as an engineer and would later bag your master's degree in economics. You definitely put the A in STEAM. But you tell me, how important was that shift to you? And secondly, what is the future of STEAM at Aramco?
Thank you very much. I'm humbled to be among such intelligent, manilians, and distinguished panel. when I started my career in Aramco, I took the technical path, which is the engineering and the field experience, which was, by everyone's talk, the path to the top. Until I went for an advanced degree in economics, a master's of arts in economics. I thought about it as a prerequisite to business. Little did I find that it's actually much more than business. I found myself learning about behaviors and behavioral economics, dealing with complexity in economic modeling, and trying to connect the dots between multiple systems. We studied the labor market, we studied the financial markets and goods market and how they interwove together. That experience reflected on my career in a very positive way. I came back away from the technical path that everyone told me you're making a big mistake by shifting away from, into strategy, market analysis, leading change and behavior. And now I manage a portfolio of a cultural center that is all about teaching creativity from kids in school all the way to adults. I'm responsible for the influence of the company through the communication engine of the company, and it has helped me further my ambition. So I think the moral of my personal experience is, yes, technical knowledge is important. The IQ will get you the job, but it's the EQ and the PQ that will differentiate you as an individual. For as much as you're keen at an entry level to learn the technical side, you need to differentiate yourself by focusing on the A in STEAM.
All right, Othman, what in your opinion makes the A in STEAM as important as it is?
To be honest, I think it's back to what Dino mentioned. The fact that the technical skills are going to be obsolete. You don't know what exists today, if what exists today will be there tomorrow for you. So getting to know the emotional intelligence side, your creativity, knowing how to navigate, say, different or difficult situations, being resilient to the changes that we have, whether it's global warming, personal matters, or even, let's say, relationship difficulties, however that it is, even it's stress. Knowing your character or your emotional intelligence and your capabilities and growing that up, that is something that nobody can take away from you. And through our research that we've seen with these lead learners, this has taken them and made them a bit more, let's say, gave them the edge over others that they have learned. And what I found what was really interesting about these lead learners is the fact that even though they had all these characteristics, they never seemed to budge. So for example, we had one interesting youth, a person that we met, and he worked for a maker community. And he actually was an immigrant. He immigrated to the US in one of the cities that we've studied. And he went through many of the difficulties. He didn't know the language. He didn't understand how to navigate his current environment. Yet in 2 years, he was able to navigate and get, let's say, perfect grades. But more than that, he was respected by his community. He was very involved. And when we asked him, and we had this like 3-hour interview with him, one of the main things that kind of popped out to us was that he was very optimistic. He was very good at relationship building. He knew how to, let's say, manage his reputation. And from that, we can at least verify the fact that, yes, we can learn programming, yes, we can learn AI, but one of the most important things that we should learn first at the basic level is how to navigate ourselves, to know who we are first, and then build on those skills. Because then, when you have a solid foundation, the rest can follow.
All right, Tsumugi, according to the Global Youth Index report by Misk Foundation, one of the key findings, especially with regards to global citizenship, said that young people are very aware of the global issues, but very few take action. Now, I believe you're on this panel to defend the young people. Why is this the case?
Well, I believe there are basically two reasons behind this phenomenon. And the first one is that the issues we face today are being increasingly complex. There are many aspects like economy, foreign policy, and like human rights, and they're all intertwined with each other, so complex. So it's really difficult to find where we should start to tackle global issues. And also, because the problems we see are becoming bigger, I think it requires more resources to solve. And that's what younger generations tend to lack. And the second reason is that, so I think younger generations are becoming more and more afraid of the consequence of failure. Because we live in such a, because the competition we face today is very harsh, and you have to be very competent to live through this competition, you become more and more afraid of losing what you have. So you rather not to take risk. And yes, we are aware that there is a global issue, but we still haven't reached the point that we take it as our own business.
Okay, thank you very much. Dino, that same report concluded that most education systems are not adequately fostering they're not adequately fostering 21st century skills. So 3 questions I have for you. 1 is, why are we still behind? 2, what can generally be done to bridge the gap? And 4, what in particular is GEMS education doing to bridge the gap?
So let me try and put all of them together. I think, why are we behind? This isn't a criticism, and it's not meant to be. GEMS Education is a private provider of education. We are actually the largest supporters of public education. We believe every child deserves a high-quality education. I think one of the massive challenges that we have today is the fact that predominantly public sector education around the world has been deteriorating. It's been deteriorating because, unfortunately, the accountability systems that are typically in place in most public education systems are challenged. Challenged by a number of things. They're challenged by the short-termism of politics. So if I go all the way to somewhere like the United States, we all know what good education looks like, but any good idea is sometimes stalled because it's used as a political football. Now, in developing emerging markets, we don't necessarily have that challenge. We have the ability, if we've got the political leadership that has prioritized human capital, then we have the opportunity to leapfrog some of these challenges. So I think when we're sitting here in the Middle East, whether we're sitting here in the kingdom or we're looking at the developing world, we have this unique opportunity to do better than mature markets around the world. So 1, I think it is predominantly public education, very poor accountability systems. I think the other thing, and this is something we should all be very conscious of, when it was the Millennium Development Goals, the global teacher shortage was 8 to 10 million. Now we have the Sustainable Development Goals, which not just talks about access to education, but access to a quality education. Anybody want to guess what the global teacher shortage is? 70 million. Now, great teachers are the primary resource that is able to drive high-quality education, that is able to unlock and unleash potential. So that is a challenge. That is a massive challenge. The final one for me is I think that there's a lot of vested interest in terms of universities and accrediting bodies that want education to stay a particular way because they have a lot to gain from it. Okay. So let me give you a very quick example. If you look at Singularity University, how many people in the crowd know about Singularity University? Okay, there's a few hands in the air. So Singularity University, my family invested in their last round of fundraising. With Singularity, which is a university, we developed a special high school program. We call it our Global Futures Curriculum. Did you know that Singularity University is not an accredited university? Why? Because they change their curriculum every 3 months. Now, given the context of the world that we're living in, does anybody in here think that what they're doing is wrong? I would argue that most people would think that is exactly what everybody else needs to be doing. And yet Singularity are not an accredited university. Now, if I think about what we do, we've designed this Global Futures Curriculum. This is about our young people looking at the big global challenges. It's about eradicating poverty, hunger, climate change, education, the big challenges. They take those big challenges and then we align everything around solving those grand challenges. This year we had 40,000 of our students participate. Now, these are the young people that will come back, and I'll tell you a story when I spoke to a team that actually went to Silicon Valley, presented. This was the idea. I spoke to a group of kids, they wanted funding, so I said, okay, give me the pitch. So they go, okay, sir, We've come up with an idea to build a home in 20 minutes for $100 that's nearly indestructible. We didn't give them that idea, but the nature of the program that we provided allowed them to dream of that idea. And yet that curriculum today is an after-school program, is a 10-week after-school program. This is not part of the core curriculum. So this, for me, feels like some of the challenges.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We're fast running out of time, and I would like for us to take a few questions from the audience. But very quickly, Roland, your innovation incubator, Next 47, is at the center of innovation, bridging the gap. What are you doing differently?
In our Next 47 approach, well, so Next 47 is about startups. So we are looking for the best startups, and what we do differently is we are having 3 elements in our Next 47 approach. One is capital. Of course, I mean, it's about investing in startups at the right time. And here, the question is, of course, to find the right spots where what we do differently is really, we're looking very much on the skills of people who are working for Next 47. The second one is what we call catalyst. This is making, to explain it simple, to make $1 of investment from Siemens worth more than another dollar. Why? Because we can open every door to almost every C-level kind of customer worldwide to startups, which is an asset. We have 45,000 engineers. More than half of them are software engineers. We can bring them together. We're working on core technologies like blockchain, like edge devices, digital twin, which we can get these people in touch. And the third element is create. We are also providing a space where young people who have an idea can really step out of their job full-time and work in an environment where they really can follow up on their ideas, but we don't let them alone. Because very often people think about a great idea and makes a good startup. This is not true. I mean, it's all about finding the right market, the go-to-market, the business model behind. So the combination makes really a good idea finally a success, or an innovation or an invention becoming an innovation. That's meaning making money out of it. So this combination, I think, is quite unique, and right. we are looking forward to really successful startups.
Okay, amazing. Fahad, very quickly, what's the average age of your workforce? And secondly, tell me, what's the role of creativity, in the global strategy in an energy company like Aramco?
Sure. A company like Aramco has some deep heritage and a young workforce. 57% of our workforce is under the age of 35. And this is an opportunity. We're talking about how skills are a differentiator in all this, but I would argue that for you to amplify these skills, you have to have a culture that can galvanize those skills into motion. We're tackling creativity at 2 levels, one at a working level and the other at a cultural level. So in the company, we care a lot for reliability. We're supplying oil and energy that's valuable to humanity. And this usually creates a culture of compliance. So when we, 10 years ago, had a push in our portfolio in technology, in going into chemicals and refining, we wanted to adjust the culture to cater for these skills to amplify. And what we did is we've introduced a behavioral program by which we gradually manage the evolution of skills and culture in line with the evolution of our portfolio. So this is at a top-down level. At a working level, we have our operations where we want to maintain compliance and ensure that it's done up to the most and accurate way of doing it. But at the same time, we wanted to introduce creativity. We have a venture capital fund, we have the technology arm, and we have our entrepreneurship arm. Those 4 entities work together in introducing, testing some of the new concepts without interrupting the operations. Okay. Gradually, these groups of excellence and interdisciplinary teams created a ripple effect around them, and gradually you see pockets of creativity around the compliance we want to achieve to ensure our business is not disrupted.
All right, thank you very much. Abdulaziz, please do share about SABIC transformation and how it affects the skills element as well as accelerating the workforce development in the kingdom.
Well, the chemical industry in general is coming from a history of, structure, process, policy. It's a background, and the underlying success criteria usually would be safety, reliability. Those are very important factors. Now, the question becomes, dealing with a situation, a very dynamic situation we're living in today, how do you transform an organization that is a hardcore chemical organization or a company into an organization that is more agile, that is more flexible, that has an environment that is conducive to innovation, for example, because the criteria for success moving in the future in the chemical industry is going to be based on a couple of things from our perspective at SABIC. It's going to be people, and it's going to be innovation. And unless we create the environment that really could stimulate innovation, stimulate breakthrough technology, then we're going to be losing a big time opportunity where we could really spearhead the chemical industry into new ventures, new levels of change, of creation of new capabilities. If you would reflect on the human basic, what made us as a species very resilient is a very simple and basic thought. We're very adaptable.
Okay.
We could adapt very quickly. I think taking this as a simple notion and applying that to our complex problems today would help us simplify solutions that we could put forward to solve many of our problems.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, I would like for us to take a few questions for the panelists from the audience, but a few rules, my rules. Once you're called upon, you must tell us your name, your organization, and where you're from. And secondly, you must ask a question, not make a comment. 3, your question must be directed at a particular panelist. And you must attempt to deliver the question in about 30 seconds or less. Okay, we'll make that 45 seconds. So if you've got a question, I will take from number 2, and I'll take number 4 first. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Architect Sharif Al-Isa. My question is for Mr. Dino. When can we have this program here?
Was that to me?
Yes. Dino? Sorry.
That's fine. I don't mind being called Dina. That's okay. The Global Futures Curriculum?
Exactly.
Look, we've been proud to have been in the kingdom for the last decade or so. We're also incredibly proud that very recently we were identified by the ministry and SAGE as kind of a front runner to invest into the kingdom. So I would hope very soon, so certainly within the next 12 months, as we hope to have the very first GEM schools here, I would hope that this would be accessible. And then obviously, as in our very productive dialogues with the ministry, if this is something that we can help our ministry and our public schools with, we'll be happy to do so. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, number 2 has a mic.
My name is Aidar Gwainem, Vice President Assistant for Business and Services in Sadara. My question goes to Mr. Fahad and Mr. Abdulaziz. The next 10 years or 12 years is going to be an interesting journey for the kingdom. Not only to achieve the 2030 vision, but to sustain the growth in different work streams after 2030. So the investment in Gen Y and Gen Z is a given fact. My question is about the role of Aramco and SABIC as a leading companies in elevating the short-term goals in the governmental and public sectors. We know that there is a secondment programs that goes between SABIC and Aramco to public sectors, but is there an on-job training or exchange of skills in between these two leading companies and the public and government sectors?
Thank you very much. Who is that question directed to?
To Fahad and Abdulaziz.
Okay.
All right.
And just off the top of my mind, I think a company as diversified as Aramco can contribute on multiple fronts to the achievement of Vision 2030. I'll just name 2 major examples that I think would make a difference. We have a localization initiative called ICTIVA, in Kingdom Total Value Add. And we thought 5 years ago, or even before that, this spending needs to go into business that is created within the kingdom, job creation that will result in a lot of that. So since we've started it, we've had some good success. Our target was 70% localization of our spending in kingdom. We're now at 50%, and we're 4 years away from achieving that goal. So this is one broad example. The other is our cultural center, King Abdulaziz World Culture ITHRA. And I think the creativity sector within the kingdom is at its infancy, and there is a lot of return on any effort you can do within that culture. So the whole creativity, entertainment, edutainment is a sector that is ripe for any effort that a company or an individual would want to make an impact on. Since we've started the full operation of King Abdulaziz Culture ITHRA, we've had 400,000 visitors, and this was only 5 months ago. Our creativity season, which I invite everyone to attend to next year, hopefully, it was over 17 days, and it had multiple workshops and events around creativity, changing the paradigm. We were overwhelmed with around 65,000 participants in the course of these 17 days. Okay. So there are so many opportunities for our companies within our business, and in addition to our business and activities such as citizenship, the SME incubator, the venture capital fund, WAAD, and what have you. We can talk about a lot of these, but I think in my mind, creativity, in my mind, the creativity sector is a huge opportunity for employment and unleashing the potential of the youth.
All right, amazing. Because we're well out of time at this point, so that's all the questions we can take right now. Tsumugi, any final words? In 30 seconds, any final words?
Well, I think in this era, it is very tough for us young generations to survive, but we should always be passionate about what we can achieve, and we should always look for a chance to grow up as a human being. And I think that through those processes, we can together change the world into a better place.
All right, thank you very much, Tsumugi. Roland?
Well, I do believe that new technologies, and all of them are based on high processing power, a lot amount of data which are stored, and the tools like AI, deep learning, machine learning, they are changing the world and turn it upside down. Technologies like 3D printing, autonomous robots, blockchain, as you like. And I think it's worthwhile for the young people to focus on these areas and to really accompany the change of industries for the sake of good.
All right, thank you very much. Dino?
Oh, wow.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, that's hard for me, usually. What I will say is this. Think of it as an opportunity. When we think about, do people know what PISA rankings are? TIMSS and PISA, I'm sure these are global standardized assessment tests. Now, there is an OECD report called The High Cost of Low Education. If we were able to improve PISA scores, just 20 points across the world countries, which is as quickly as Poland did it in, by the way, 6 years, over the next 20, the productivity gain for the world is about $110 trillion. Over the next 20 years, if we're able to get every country to the levels that Finland operate at today, the economic opportunity that we have is $260 trillion. So for me, when I think about the skills that we need to embed in our young people, it's just a simple question. Surely it's worth it.
All right, Fahad?
I would take it back to my first example. While IQ is important, I think EQ and PQ are even more relevant. My advice is, in a world of volatility and ambiguity, you have to embrace uncertainty, continue learning, and just be positive and move on.
All right, Abdulaziz?
Yeah, I think we need to do less of thinking for our youth and deciding what the future would be for them, and probably give them a chance to start describing their future, because sooner or later, they're just going to impose it on what's taking place. They are designing the future. They are the ones that are enabling visions like the one we have, the SABIC 2030 vision. It represents really a symbolic pinnacle of hope and change, prosperity. So it's an excellent opportunity for all, and I think that we need to, they are part of the process, and I think that I'm very optimistic, and I think that we will see many of these changes taking place, and next year when we have a similar panel, maybe I think we're going to be talking about a lot of achievements.
All right. Othman?
Yeah, I have two messages, basically. The first is for the youth. I think before you listen to us, you should listen to yourself. You should determine inside you what you want, what are your priorities first, before you go on to learn the skills that you want to learn for tomorrow. Because these are the guiding compass, let's say, for your future, your North Star, so to speak. The second is for our educational systems and ministries, for corporate. So 50% of the world's population is under the age of 30. I think what we've seen through our research is that a lot of these, let's say, corporations, present company excluded, they talk about youth and not to youth. And I'm really honestly happy today to see companies talking about involving youth within their decision-making, within their own, let's say, upskilling. But yes, talk to youth, not about them.
Not about youth. Now, thank you. Yes, please. All right. This has been such a great session, and I'm sure we're assured that we surely have a youth who recognize and feel the need to take agency over their lives. Youth who are optimistic about learning future skills and happy to keep evolving to meet the challenges of the future as they commit to lifelong learning. We're hopeful that we will harness the genuine optimism of these young ones. And I would like to once again say big thank you to our panelists and an even bigger thank you to you, our audience, for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of the forum. Thank you.
So you go down this way. Yep. Are you very welcome? All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.